I feel like an escaped slave, because what I saw in the United States in those prisons was slavery. It was black people with chains in cells. It was just poor people, just stepped on and smashed. I'll never forget what I saw. I'll never forget what I've lived through. I'll never forget what my people have lived through.
Welcome, family. Today we are discussing about this black queen, a black warrior, Assata Shakur. She lived as a daughter of Harlem, rose as a revolutionary, and carried the spirit of a people who refused to bow. To some, she was a fugitive. To us, she was a warrior, a mother, a teacher, and a voice against injustice. On September 25, 2025, the world lost Assata Shakur. She was 78 years old, and though her body rests in Cuba, her spirit remains everywhere her name is spoken. This is more than her story. This is her legacy. Rest in peace, Assata Shakur.
Rest in peace to our black queen, Assata Shakur. She's passed away at the age of 78, y'all. Oh my God. If you don't know who this woman is, you need to pick up a book.
Her name was Assata Shakur. Born Joan Chestnut, she became one of the most controversial and celebrated figures in American history. To some, she was a criminal. To many, she was a freedom fighter, a warrior in a war against oppression. But her story lives on, because her life was not just about one woman. It was about a black struggle, the determination to live free, and the courage to resist against all odds.
I was in prison altogether 6.5 years. I spent more than 2.5 years in solitary confinement. Much of that was in men's prisons. In other words, I was the only woman. Even though they say that there are no political prisoners in the United States, I was kept in solitary confinement, kept in men's prisons because of my political beliefs. So you figure that.
Joan Chestnut was born in Queens, New York in 1947. Like many young black people of her generation, she grew up watching her community suffer under the weight of racism, poverty, and police harassment. By the late 1960s, she joined the Black Panther Party, an organization determined to defend black communities and demand justice. The Panthers were bold, feeding children, protecting neighbors, and exposing the violence of white supremacy. But the US government saw them differently. Under COINTELPRO, the FBI launched a ruthless campaign to destroy the Panthers. Leaders were jailed, exiled, and assassinated. The movement was targeted as if it were an enemy nation inside America. Assata was part of this storm. She eventually joined the Black Liberation Army, a group that believed armed struggle was necessary for freedom. To the system, that made her dangerous. To her people, it made her brave. In 1973, Assata was involved in a shootout in the New Jersey Turnpike. A state trooper was killed, and though the details remain contested, Assata was captured, shot, and accused of murder. Her trial became a symbol of criminalization of black resistance. Supporters argue that she was unfairly targeted because of her activism. She was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. But Assata Shakur was not just a prisoner. She was a mother. In 1974, behind prison's wall, she gave birth to her daughter, Cuba Shakur. 2 weeks later, the state took her baby away. Imagine that pain. Giving life only to have it ripped from you by a system that feared your very existence. In 1979, with the help of Alice, Assata escaped from prison. She was hidden in safe houses, protected by those who believed in her innocence and in the cause she represented. Eventually, she fled to Cuba, where she was granted asylum by Fidel Castro. Castro saw in her not a criminal, but a political exile, a survivor of racial oppression. To many, Cuba was a land of refuge, especially for black revolutionaries. Fidel had shown solidarity with African nations, supported liberation struggles, and welcomed freedom fighters who could not survive in the United States. Assata found peace there. She raised her daughter, lived quietly, and became a symbol, proof that resistance could not be completely silenced. Assanta's story lived on. Her godson, Tupac Shakur, carried her fire into hip-hop, reminding the world that their struggle was far from over. Artists like Public Enemy and Common celebrated her name in music. Films like Queen and Slim drew inspiration from her fight against state violence. Documentaries like Eyes of the Rainbow gave her voice to tell her truth. Even in exile, Assata became a legend, a queen of resilience, a symbol of how far black women will go to protect their people. Her spirit echoes the warrior queens of Dahomey, the fierce women of Africa, who fought with unbreakable courage. But what about today? Do we still honor the unity that protected Assata? Do we recognize the sacrifices of our warriors? Too often, our heroes are forgotten, dismissed, or demonized. Assata Shakur fought for civil rights, and yet most of Americans does not know her name. Her story reminds us that freedom is not given, it is fought for. That family is not only blood, but the community that hides you, protects you, and loves you when the world tries to erase you. We miss that familyness, that unity, and until we reclaim it, the struggle of Assata and countless others will remain unfinished. Assata Shakur spent the last 4 decades of her life in Cuba, living in quiet exile. On September 25, 2025, she passed away at the age of 78. Her resilience, her courage, and her sacrifice are part of a long tradition of black women warriors who carried nation on their backs. Assata, we thank you for leading, for resisting, for showing us that persistence is power. Because as long as her story is remembered, the fight for justice will never die. Rest in power, Queen Assata Shakur. Rest in power, Queen Assata Shakur. That is all I got to say in today's episode. Let me know what you think. Do you think that black heroes are celebrated the way they are supposed to be celebrated? This is Assata Shakur that most of the people don't know about. But to me, I think that she's one of a strong women who believed in the black Americans, who believe in the black people, who believe in black people's struggle. But without saying much, let me know what you think about Assata Shakur. Until we meet next time, peace, love, and harmony.